I'm Robin Barton, editor of the OHS Insider, and I'm here with Dylan Short, who just participated in a panel discussion on Ontario OHS Reform, what Bill 160 means to your OHS program. Thank you for being with us.
Well, thank you very much.
So Bill 160 and the Dean report. Should employers in Ontario panic about these developments, or how should they respond?
Well, I don't think it's necessarily something to panic about, but there is an awful lot of change coming forward. Change, though, is in a lot of ways an opportunity for a self-reflection and for us to look at what we're doing well, what we can do differently going into the future. So it's not something to look at, to panic about, but it's something that needs to be on our radar. We need to know that there is change coming and that a fair amount of change has already been prescribed through Bill 160. And there seems to be a lot more change coming from there.
Do we have an idea on a timetable as to when that change is going to arrive?
Well, from what we've seen so far, change is coming quickly, as I said. 160 is a lot of the requirements look like they're going to be implemented for the new business year for the government, which is April 1st, 2012. One of the really interesting things that happened, though, is the Tony Dean report came out in December 2010. And within about 5 or 6 months, we saw what the regulation was. And one of the things that happened that was really interesting is the regulation, the Act and administrative changes have all been very close to what the Dean report is. For government to change some fundamental systems that quickly, they are moving pretty quickly down this road. The consultation piece that happened with the Dean report, I think, really allowed them to be able to understand where things are at, and understand what the priority of changes are and what needs to happen to be able to affect that change.
So at this point, should employers in Ontario wait for specific regulations or fleshing out some of the requirements in Bill 160, or should they start taking steps now?
I wouldn't wait. Most organizations have a difficult time affecting change quickly because there's so many priorities in running a business. Health and safety, as much as I'm a health and safety professional and I want it to be everything, it doesn't live in a vacuum. So we have to be able to look at the entire corporation and how quickly we're able to change. So waiting for it might put you in a position where you're being forced to do things in a timing that doesn't actually work for your business. So some of the things that are out there now is they've talked about some of the prescribed training standards, and there's going to be tools and resources coming with that. But the interesting portion is that all of the signs, the signals seem to be that the prescribed training standards that were outlined, all of those requirements that are in the Dean panel are all of what the health and safety system partners are talking about. So if you look at your programs now and see whether or not that training component lines up with those standards, it gets you a head start on either knowing that, yeah, I'm in a good spot and we're doing a good job, or maybe there's something we need to adjust course on. It gets you a little bit ahead of the curve on how things are coming along. I mentioned earlier about how quickly things are changing. Bill 160, I think, really is just phase one in a multiple phase change of the prevention system. So if that's just phase one, we're going to see phase 2 and 3 and 4, however many that happens. We need to make sure we stay on top of it, and if you can, stay ahead of it. And anytime you can be ahead of it, it's just an advantage.
So one of the things that you would recommend then is doing essentially an audit of your current program in comparison to the Dean report recommendations, see where you have gaps, and then try and fill those gaps. Very
much so. It's it is something the Dean report did do extensive consultations with management, with employers, with labor, with other interested parties, and they heard a lot of viewpoints in that. They took that into consideration when they wrote that report. Bill 160 aligns itself very closely to it, so that really is what's seeing as coming through on the content side is the Dean report. So if that's what's happening, and that seems to be what's happening from the Ministry of Labor, that then allows us to take that content and really use it as an audit tool. Use it as a matrix of comparison to say, is my program today meeting those? Right now we're in the 4th quarter of the year, which is traditionally the time of year that we start doing the plans for next year's projects and activities. So it's a good time to maybe put that in and look at doing a program review and then building out what gaps may be apparent from there.
So essentially Dean report as a blueprint.
Yes.
Okay. The Bill 160 and the Dean report recommendations, do they impact different employers differently? For example, larger employers versus small businesses?
Overall, I don't think that technically they're going to impact large business, small business differently.
Practically?
But I think practically it's going to be a big difference. Small employers really tend to fly under the radar. And that is an intention issue. That's really a practice. Large employers tend to have more incidents in the business. They tend to attract more attention for a number of different reasons. But the majority of employers in this province are small employers, have 5, 10, 15 employees. And even at 15 employees, that can be a large organization compared to a number of others. So I think what's going to happen is with some of the prescribed training requirements for frontline supervisors, for health and safety orientations, for health and safety representatives, worker representatives, those things are going to start to affect small business. And my own personal concern is that a lot of small business isn't focusing on this because they don't have a health and safety professional in the business. There's a number of them that they supplement it either through consultants, rarely, or it's about their own good intentions, that they build programs and they do things because it's the right thing to do. And they do manage their business really successfully. One of the impacts that may happen though with this is that because they don't know what's coming, when it becomes law and anything happens, that it gets magnified for them. So getting that information out and getting that knowledge to a small employer really is something that needs to happen.
So is there anything that larger employers, particularly those that have to deal with a lot of small businesses, is there anything that they can or should be doing now to sort of facilitate getting that knowledge to the smaller businesses?
One of the things that I recommend to a number of my clients is having information sessions with their small contractors. A lot of large organizations today use numbers of small contractors. I have one company that I do work with. They have 1,000 employees, so it's a big organization. They have 2,800 contractors that they deal with, and I don't even know the number of those that are different businesses. So one of the things that they're doing is actually going out and doing information sessions. Did you know this is coming? Did you know this is happening? And they're doing that in part, and we put together a really interesting way to deliver that information for them, because they don't want their contractors to have their businesses upset. They want them to be able to be proactive about some of the change, understand what's coming. It's in the large employer's interest for them to look at it and say that all of my contractors, their business is going to be more successful because they're going to be ahead of the curve. They're going to be ahead of the competition. It's another way to have a competitive advantage for a large business is to be able to partner with those small businesses. And it helps to tie a level of loyalty that goes with it too.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.